This week on SV Lynx. Welcome to this week's SV Lynx video. Well, we have something very cool to show you this week in the building of the boat. We got the cabin top started and placed up on the forms.
But before we get to that, last week we went over the Phase 3 things we accomplished, and we'll link that down in the description or up here as well. And we want to get to that before we get on to the Phase 4 list.
So let's take a look at our list. First of all, we need the cabin top finished and on the boat.
And we're expecting a very hot summer from the weather reports, and so that'll give us some shade underneath that roof while we work on some other things. But before we can have that shade, we need to finish the rooftop there, and that will include making the rain catchment system onto the boat. That'll be a lot easier to do now rather than when the thing's already up on the roof and we have to flip it over, which we couldn't do when it was mounted. So here we can flip over the small pieces and finish off that rain catchment system. So we'll do it now.
And we made great progress on the cabin top roof this week, which we'll show you in a moment. But first, let's say that we think we can get this completed in 3 weeks.
Next, we plan to add the rest of the bulkheads, though there are only 4 of those left to go. Those are up in the bow on the starboard canoe.
As part of that, we still need to add 3 of the 4 keelsons, so we'll glass those in as well. Both the bulkheads and keelsons should take about a week.
And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to glass in the bilge webs in both hulls, and that should take us about a week.
Next, it'll be time to work on our chamfer panels.
These are the angled side panels that run along the bottom of the boat, connecting the canoes to the bridge deck. By adding these angled panels, we increase the width of the living space in the hulls, yet don't widen the portion of the hulls that are in the water, which would slow down our sailing performance.
That will take about 1 week per side or 2 weeks total. Which brings us to the next job, constructing the bridge deck.
This is a big one and the largest job in Phase 4. Not only do we need to construct all the webbing and bond it to the floor panels, but we also need to add the carbon fiber and beams inside to support the mast.
Plus, we'll be adding all the conduits for the electrical, fuel, and plumbing, which will cross through these webs.
Right, and once the whole thing is all prepped and everything, we have one thing left to do. We have to bond the floor, and to do that, we have to create something called dummy coves, since we won't be able to get to the underside. And so we have to make all those and then bond them to the webs in there and then glue down the floor.
We must also kerf the forward area to a rounded shape and add a layer of glass laminate over that section.
Next, we have to lift that heavy bridge deck that we just completed up to bond it to the bottom of all the bulkheads. And that'll be an interesting task that we have to do. But the entire creation of the bridge deck will take us about 6 weeks total.
Once the bridge deck is in place, we'll start working on the dagger boards again. We'll finish them up and use them to build the dagger board casings.
And that will take us through August, which is the end of Phase 4. But by then, we're going to have the ability to walk around inside the hulls or upside the boat. So all the soles will be in place, so that's going to be great. And after that, we're going to take those dagger board casings that we just made, and we're going to cut them into the hulls, but that's part of Phase 5, so let's not talk about that yet. We'll get to that list when we get there. It's a new week and a new job. We're going to start working on the cabin top. Now, you might remember from last week that we haven't finished putting in the bulkheads on the starboard canoe up in the bow. And the problem there is that not only were we waiting on some Western red cedar for that, but also we ran out of our particular fiberglass. We need to fiberglass in the very tip of the bow, just like we did on the porthole. And that's going to come later this week. There's nothing saying that we have to work on those particular bulkheads right now. And so since we wanted to get to this cabin top as soon as possible, since we're waiting for that stuff anyway, we went ahead and picked up all the western red cedar that we're going to need, not only for the keelsons, bow and stern, but also we picked up the stuff we're going to need for the bridge deck eventually while we were at the lumber store this morning. So the first thing we're going to do today, though, is we're going to rip some of these western red cedars into the correct size strips for the keelsons, and we're probably going to lay out just one, although we're not going to glass it in since we're waiting on that glass. As soon as that's done, we're going to switch over and start working on the roof. And the first thing we have to do is put our cubes all out here and fill this whole space with them. We'll use all of them, and cover our cubes with plywood so that they're ready to build the cabin top on there. And the first thing is to assemble the MDF. So we're going to get going on that right now. We bought extra wide boards so we could rip a couple out of them. It was a little cheaper that way. So we got to rip them, therefore. All right, it's time to rearrange our cubes, and that means a big 6x6 grouping of them to build the top of the cabin on there. And these things are heavy, especially if they have plywood on them. So we're gonna move the biggest one right now. That should be fun. There's a method to my madness, although I might just be too crazy to notice that it's just madness. But I have a little layout here of these different shaped cubes, because some of them are 8x8, some are 8x10, and one's 10x10. So I have a way to lay these out on the lot, and that's what we're going to do right now. The first thing in here, it says 2 8x8s right here. Okay. There are our tables. They're in. Whew. Job part one of many. Next up, we need to level all these, and this ground is nowhere near level, and these therefore are nowhere near level. So what we do is going to get them generally level. So we're going to put little blocks underneath all here, and we're going to get these things generally level. But even then, the top of these, having had water on them from all these rains and stuff, are kind of warbly, and they're never going to be level, not perfectly. But that's okay, because let me show you what we're going to do. When we put the forms on, each one of the forms will be put on little stilts all over the place, and we can level that specific spot to whatever we need to here until we get all of this MDF truly level, even though this will only be generally level. So that's the goal, and that's what we do. So we're going to level these first, and we also have to put plywood on the gaps over there. So we'll be laying plywood down on those 8-footers to get all plywood, because we need that to do these little leveling sticks. We need a surface for that. And there you have it, generally level. As you can see down here, I had to go pretty high there because the ground is high over there. The absolute highest spot of the ground is way over there. So we started from there and brought it all up to that same level. So it is generally level now. On to the next leveling. But first we're going to put the plywood across these openings. So we'll need, oh, what do we need? 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 of those. 8 pieces of plywood coming up. Okay, so we got some plywood on all of it now. That's a large roof we have to build on there, as you can really see. It's big. And this is so not level. Like I told you it wouldn't be. Generally level. That means it's within like an inch in places and such. But those stilts will be more than 3 inches or so. We can make up all that oddities just with the stilts, so it'll be fine. The cabin top MDF will be perfectly level on here. We just needed a surface to put the stilts onto, even if that surface isn't awesome. Okay, we're getting started on building the strongback and then all the rest of this MDF forms for the cabin top. So we got them out. They were in the back behind the shipping container, and we didn't have room anywhere else, so because we had to take them out of the green shipping container when we bought it. And we covered it all in plastic and everything, but with our historic reps of rain, unfortunately, some of these got wet, and even though they were covered. And so all the strongback is fine and everything, but there's a few of the actual ribs that got very, very wet, as you can see here. So we've laid them out to dry in the sun here, and we'll just have to deal with it. But what a pain from all that rain. It is what it is, and we move forward. So today we're going to start getting the strongback, and we'll put occasional ribs across to get the general form, and then we'll start filling in more and more ribs as we go.
We're starting to put this MDF together, and we are still having a little bit of trouble with it because there are a few places where the water got to it and it's swelled a little bit. That makes it inserting them together difficult. And that back corner there, we had to pound that one down with a hammer quite a bit, which dented the top of the MDF. It won't matter because the piece of the roof will bridge across that little dent, so it really actually won't hurt anything, but it's a pain in the butt. And then the second thing that we noticed is that these pieces aren't full length in all the cases. So, example, this piece goes over here, and this extends all the way out here, about 8 inches beyond the cable, which we expected. And that's fine, but that's a single piece. But on the other side, over here, piece only comes to here. And that's because we're gonna have to seal on this piece here. And now it extends out the same approximate distance out here as the other side. So we're gonna have to join these pieces together with some blocks and put stilts, multiple stilts here to make sure that this is working. So all the ones along this side, starting from 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, are all gonna have extensions like this. So you have to So that our first 3 cube bits. Tomorrow we'll work on the other side, those 3 groupings that attach on the other side. Once we get those on, we'll level everything, and then we'll slot in some of these ones that are missing.
This morning we're going to take these destroyed cabin top MDF pieces that you see down here, and we're going to cut new ones out of plywood because these things are just not going to fly. They're too destroyed. There's 5 bad ones, so we picked up enough plywood today to do all 5. So we've got some plywood here to redo these. And I know this looks thick, but it's swelled. So all we're going to do is just lay them out on here and use them as a template. We're just going to draw the shape out. including the notches. In this case, there's only one. Okay, one down. So that's our 5 super water damaged pieces, and so we've recreated them all now. The rest of it has a little bit of water damage, but not up where it matters like this one, and most of that has none. So we're good to go now, so we can build the rest of this and not have to deal with too much problem from the water. We've got all the MDF forms up for the roof that we want to put up. There's still a few we haven't put in, and that's just because they're adding weight. Because right now this thing is a big mess. It's not level in any way, shape, or form. And so the first thing we have to do is take some 2x4 blocks and screw them into every one of these joints everywhere around here to get these things to square up. Instead of being at an angle like that, we need to get them squared up. And the only way to do that is to keep them that way, is we're going to screw blocks in all these different joints everywhere so that these things are square to each other. Once that's true, these are still in individual sections. See, they're not connected like right here. So this is a section, and there's sections like this. And so what we'll do then is we're going to, once this thing is square, we're going to level this section. And that's done with the stilts. And once this section is leveled, we'll move on to the section next to it, level it to this one, and then we can attach at these points these things together, and then we'll just work our way back, squaring each one and leveling it all and screwing them all together until this thing becomes one completely level piece. And it's going to be tricky and difficult, but we'll do it, especially since these boards move if you walk on them. They're fine if you're not putting our weight on them, but it'll be tricky to get to the middle and square this. So we got some challenges to overcome for that. Now once we get this thing all squared up and leveled, we're going to get the big pieces out, and the big pieces are huge. There's a single piece of this roof that's 9 feet wide by 27 feet long, goes right through the center of this whole thing. And it's a single piece. And it still has all its peel ply on it, so we're going to have to pull all that peel ply off of that before we put it up here, because it would be too hard doing it up here. And then we have a piece that goes full length down the side, a piece that comes up this side to the helm, and a small piece behind the helm up there. So all total there's 1, 2, big one, 3, big long one, 4. So 4 pieces, but that's still a lot of square footage we have to pull with peel ply. And so this is going to take a while. We knew that this was going to be the slowest part of this whole process, was getting this thing level and square. This morning we're squaring up all of the MDF. So we're getting if we're looking from the top down, we're getting them square this way. And that doesn't do anything for leveling or aligning or any of that stuff, but it does get them square where they're attached. And so we need a whole bunch of blocks. Brian's over there screwing some in right now, and I'm just going to cut some more. We've begun leveling now finally. We squared all these joints with the blocks that we put in. And now we're starting to put our stilts in to level this. So for example, this first one here and this number 2 is perfectly level this direction. And we've already leveled this whole area over here to start with, and now we're working off of that. So for example, you can see back there that that's way off, but the next thing we're going to do is bring that one up and level that one off of this here. And so we're just going to keep working our way back, lining things up, leveling it all, and all up on these stilts now. So We just put these in everywhere, and we can adjust it to whatever height we need. And we just stick a level on here all along there and make sure that's good. Now we also replaced this board because it had some water damage on the bottom, and we checked it and it had slight warpage to it because of that, so we just put a new board on and replaced it as well. So that was the last of the fairly damaged boards. Nothing else has much damage to it at all, so we replaced them all now. So we're good to go. We'll just keep leveling. So as we each one, we use the bottom here to check the level, and that gets it dead level there because all the bottoms are flat. We can't use any of the top parts, but so we just keep getting the bottoms all the way across in all of them, this direction, all of them perfectly level. And so this first part right here is now done. We just got to do like 75% more. Well, we've got Nick back helping us today. Hey, Nick. And he is pulling peel ply off of the center cabin top piece. And this is the big one that's 26 feet by, what is that? We'll call that maybe 7 or 8. I'll tell you. I already know it's 26 feet long. We just measured that, and this is 7.5. Okay. And so he's already pulled the peel ply on the other side. And so we just turned it and walked it around. That was fun. We'll show you the walking it out when we go to put it in position in a minute. We're pulling the peel ply in strips here because it's easier. So we're going to leave him to that, and we're going to get back to working on continuing to level because parts of the MDF, we've about 75% now, so we got about 25% more before we can put this stuff on top. So it's all looking pretty level now. We just have to put a few more ribs across, and we're tacking them down a little bit. And then we're going to go ahead and put the cabin tops on.
So we put the largest section of the centerpiece on, and we're bringing in the other portion of that, which goes up to where you can see that strong back of MDF there. And then there's one last piece on the port side that we'll put on. And then on the starboard side, there's the 2 small ones. So we'll get to those in just a minute, and we'll have all of the roof up on there.
All right, we'll put the last piece on of the roof. Of course, we're not blasting this. We just want it up here. Because even though I told you we were looking for a 10-day window when it wasn't going to rain, and we found one. So the 10-day forecast was all sunshine, except now it's going to rain tonight to 11 p.m. and it's for a few hours. So we had to get this roof on over the MDF, so we covered this whole thing with plastic and not create these holes in that MDF.
Well, that's a wrap for today. We've got our top of our boat on here. Not glassed yet, but it's on. That means all the leveling and squaring and all that stuff got done, and all the peel ply got pulled by our friend Nick, who came and helped, did all of that while Brian and I continued leveling. And we've got the top of the cover on because it's going to rain tonight. And so it's really not too much of a problem here, because with the top on here, the water will just roll right off. It's not going to form pools inside those MDF pieces. So that's well covered for tonight. And I hope it's not a very heavy rain, but we'll see what it is. and that's it for this week. So I'm going to head back to the house, and the Admiral's home by now from her second job, and we'll do a little wrap up for this week. So stick around for that.
We made great progress this week on the cabin roof. We originally thought it was going to take us 2 weeks, but we did it in one.
Part of the problem is that there was some unscheduled rain. We looked for a window of 10 days to build this top, because once we started putting that MDF onto the tabletops, it's very susceptible to moisture, and we had to have it covered by the actual roof of the boat in case we had rain. So we needed a nice 10-day window to do this, and we found one. I said sunny days all the way for 10 days, except 3 days after we started putting the MDF out, they changed the weather report and said that there was going to be rain in 2 days. So we only had 2 more days instead of 7 more days to get that thing leveled and ready and the tops put on and everything. But with some hard work by Brian and myself and some help at the end with Nick, we managed to get that roof up. And so that was great.
Now we can move on to the rain catchment system and get this massive cabin top onto the boat within the next 2 weeks. That'll give us shade as we build the bridge deck underneath.
And we won't be bonding all the pieces together until we get the entire rain catchment system completely finished, because we need to be able to flip over those pieces.
And once the rain catchment system's finished, then we'll bond the roof pieces together.
Sounds good. And finally, we need to lift this beast all the way up into the air and move it forward to set it down nearly on top of the huge Big Bertha bulkheads and such. And this thing is massive, so that should be an exciting day.
So join us next week as we start cutting the edges of the roof and forming that rain catchment system.
And thank you all so much for watching our videos. We really appreciate you spend some time with us. And also, thank you to all of our patrons. We appreciate them helping with this project.
And as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click on the bell icon to be notified of our next video.
And we'll see you next week.
Bye.